Nearly a year into the pandemic, it has now become apparent COVID-19 has brought fundamental changes not only to the way we live our daily lives, but also to how the global economy operates. This is Telexikon, the series in which we explore how and why. No matter how advanced medical sciences may be, it still takes time to develop a vaccine. In order to provide that time, we use a simple method to slow the spread of the virus: social distancing. However, this causes new problems by putting huge segments of the economy in a difficult position. Social distancing suffocates the hospitality and events industry. It makes manufacturing more complicated. Closed borders halt tourism and place obstacles before international trade. On top of that, the coronavirus appeared in a world that is more interconnected than ever before. Complicated supply chains reach all over the globe, and the free and quick movement of people is the basis of nearly everything. If they close a factory in China due to COVID-19, an assembly line in Vietnam runs out of parts, which causes a shortage in the Hungarian store of a Norwegian telecommunications company. If John and his buddies from Manchester cannot go to Budapest for his stag party, that hurts not only the Irish budget airline, but the Budapest Airbnb, not to mention the pub where they plan to get smashed. That is a problem big enough in itself, but letting the pandemic loose would have had even graver consequences, measurable not only in money, but in human lives as well. Governments of the world were unwilling to take this chance, and during the first wave in the spring, they followed the least risky playbook. The unprecedented lockdowns flattened the curve pretty well. But as we will see, the economy was severely hit. In most parts of the world, the crisis exceeds levels seen during the 2008 Great Recession. Normally, such a crash has dire repercussions. Companies may lay off workers, and that's the better scenario. They could possibly go bankrupt in droves as people afraid of the virus restrain their consumption, strengthening the vicious cycle of the recession. But this crisis was caused artificially by governments in order to avoid even bigger problems. So the pressure to solve this issue is also on them. Armed with experiences of the 2008 recession, where austerity measures hindered economic growth for years, their new motto is that a quick recovery can only be achieved with increased state action. So the restrictions were closely followed with record-breaking bailouts. The US has spent $3 trillion on the recovery. The EU augmented member states' packages with €750 billion, and central banks have flooded the banking system with money. The social disaster was successfully averted the first time around. Free money was great for the newly unemployed masses, and countries subsidising wages managed to save more jobs than expected. And the summer reopenings helped recreate some of the jobs that disappeared during the first wave. But then the second wave hit in the autumn, and the restrictions are now back. The manufacturing sector has somewhat adapted to the pandemic. Office jobs have embraced remote work, but many services are knocked out by fears of infection and measures such as limiting restaurants to deliveries and takeaways. Tourism, responsible for 1/10 of the world's economic performance, has basically hit rock bottom. Air travel is in the greatest crisis of its history, and large airlines are only kept afloat by bailouts. Even though vaccine research is coming along nicely, it will still take some time until it's finished and the vaccines are distributed around the world. So it seems like COVID-19 and its debilitating economic effects are here to stay. In that case, we can say goodbye to the much-expected quick V-shaped recovery. Employment stays low, just like the demand for goods and services. There will be fewer investments, causing enormous damage to the economy. These can be countered by large amounts of targeted state subsidies. If we give money to the people, they will eventually spend it, thereby keeping the economy running. The question is how deep governments are willing to reach into their pockets. And with that, we have arrived at the consequences of the pandemic that could upend the entire world of economy and finance. In the current extreme situation, even the European Union, known for its financial rigour, has let loose and allowed member states to have higher deficits and debt. Large central banks around the globe took steps that were previously inconceivable in some places. They simply started printing money to cover the state's increased expenses. In classical economics, this is a big no-no. It kickstarts inflation, burns the fields, causes floods, and makes cows' udders run dry. Even before the pandemic, there was an economic theory taking hold, which suggested that the state can just create money out of thin air without repercussions, as long as it finds a sensible way to spend it, and budget deficit is not a problem in itself. Now we see this theory being tested live, and as of now, despite the handouts, inflation seems to be under control. In the most developed countries, it even decreased. Another factor pointing towards bigger state spending is that governments of the world have realised that they cannot withdraw funds from healthcare and education without it coming back to bite them in the rear. Governments that had spent more in these areas were more prepared to face a crisis like the one we are in right now. This may signal the start of a new world where looser fiscal policies and higher debts will be the new norm. If the generous state subsidies remain even after the crisis is over, the question will be what people are spending this extra money on. There are dangers to this. If people use this money to purchase things with a finite supply, prices will skyrocket. If they invest, that could create stock market bubbles. You can already see signs of this, by the way. Some stocks have started to perform unrealistically well. It would be a mistake, of course, to say that all stock market favourites are in this category. Stocks of pharmaceutical and tech companies are selling well. But this mostly shows that the pandemic has accelerated processes that would otherwise have taken 5 or 10 years to complete, meaning huge profits for some, but huge losses for even more. In the hardest hit sectors, many companies are incapable of adapting to the new situation. Many go under or manage to just avoid bankruptcy with copious state aid and cheap loans, but this cannot go on indefinitely. They will turn into zombie corporations that will barely scrape by, pulling the entire economy back. According to many experts, the two extremes will lead to a so-called K-shaped recovery. Some sectors will shake the effects of the pandemic off without an issue, while others can expect a traditional, drawn-out crisis. So what follows from all this? Right now, we cannot yet see the end of the crisis. But what is sure is that the coronavirus has disrupted parts of our lives we never thought it could get to. The effects of the pandemic are here to stay for years, even after the vaccine becomes available to everyone.
Elindult a Telex YouTube csatornája. Ha szeretnél még ilyen videókat nézni, iratkozz fel!